friend of mine, in fact, emailed me a couple days ago, said, BP stock is right now very low, and most of the analysts are calling it a buy. Should I be buying it? And, I don't give stock advice, but my personal opinion is this company could go the way of Enron. There are so many lies stacked on top of each other. And such a disaster. And now pension funds are going to be suing them. But also we're getting reports that the rain coming down in Louisiana, there was a huge thunderstorm a couple days ago, or maybe before yesterday, in one of the towns on the coast, and the storm brought down water that was creating puddles that had that multicolored sheen of oil. It might be dispersant. That's more evaporative. I'll give you more details on that a little later. And also we have this report from Captain Mike Ellis, one of the boat captains who was hired by BP to skim up the oil in the Gulf of Mexico, that in these giant booms where they're skimming up the oil, they're also catching all kinds of Ridley sea turtles, which is an endangered species, with the $50,000 fine to kill one of these turtles. And that when this guy tried to save it, and there's video of this that you can see, I don't recommend it necessarily because it's really pretty pathetic and give you nightmares, but when he tried to save these turtles, he was told explicitly by BT, no, burn them alive. And as a result of that now, PETA, the People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, is asking us to call the Attorney Generals of Alabama, Florida, Louisiana, Mississippi to file charges of cruelty to animals against British Petroleum, or against BP. They haven't been called British Petroleum in 10 years. The actual corporate name is BP. Against BP. And William Yeatman, he's the Energy Policy Analyst with the Competitive Enterprise Institute, CEI.org, on the line with us. William, why shouldn't BP be, they pled guilty to corporate felonies in 2007. This is a corporation which is a felon. Shouldn't we have a 2 or 3 strikes and you're out? And why shouldn't they be held accountable for crimes against nature?
Oh, well, I think you'll perhaps be shocked to learn that whereas on I would assume 99% of the issues out there, we're coming at it from antithetical positions. On this one, we're in 100% agreement. And indeed, it was the Congress in 1990 limiting BP. Back then, they were called British Petroleum before they became Beyond Petroleum in a big rebranding campaign a decade ago. Right. But in 1990, the Congress capped their liability at $75 million. All
right, this was in the wake of the Exxon Valdez, a real aggressive effort by the Republicans that was led by Ted, what was his name, the senator from Alaska? What's his name? Ted Stevens.
Stevens,
yeah.
Yes. Who was indicted and just elected out of office due to that scandal, which...
Yes.
But neither here nor there. The point being that the Congress caps liability at $75 million and thereby, in essence, subsidizes BP's risk on the open water for these drilling endeavors. So It was this government action that one could, one can reasonably, we won't know till we get to the bottom of this, till an investigation is complete, but it stands to reason if they thought their liability was limited at $75 million, perhaps they would be riskier.
Of course. It's the same thing with the banks. So when Phil Gramm pushed through the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act that blew up Glass-Steagall, and when he pushed through the Commodity Futures Modernization Act that his wife Wendy, was lobbying for when she was on the board of Enron, and it wasn't just Phil Gramm. Bill Clinton enthusiastically signed both these things. The Conservadems and the Republicans together both wanted to deregulate the banks, remove the risk, basically make the United States the bailout of first choice for them, and look what we got. We got a banking disaster. So I agree with you on that point.
This is absolutely amazing. This is it's a second issue where I guess we agree. Because again, I would argue it was misguided government policies. Fannie, Freddie, being the backstop purchasers or for these incredibly complex housing securities and whatnot, and then President Bush's big push for housing. Indeed,
Fannie and Freddie were followers in this act. They were not leaders in this act. But back to the
hundreds of billions of dollars worth of following. But they
but we're talking about trillions.
A different issue.
But we're talking. It is a different issue. We're talking with William Yeatman. He is the Energy Policy Analyst at the Competitive Enterprise Institute, and so we're in agreement that government can get things right or they can get things wrong. They can distort the market in positive ways or negative ways. Do I have that right?
Well, I think...
Or do you just want the government out of this? Do you think that if there were no regulations on oil drilling whatsoever, that BP would have said, our risk is pretty high because people can sue us in the courts, and therefore we never would have had this spill? Is that your hypothesis?
No. I mean, allow me to clarify. I mean, not a hypothesis. I mean, I would argue that government can't regulate. I mean, look at what MMS did. The government entity responsible for regulating was in bed with the oil industry, and that's what happens when we mix
post-Bush administration. During the Clinton administration.
I mean, we've been under the Obama administration for 2 years, so he's got to accept. I mean,
come on,
he's the boss. I mean, the buck stops there, does it not?
Yeah.
I mean, let's have some of that. So I would argue that's textbook evidence right there that government is incapable of regulating. And then on top of that, we've got government limiting liability for BP. Now, what has happened in the wake of this accident? BP, as your friend alluded to, has lost $70 billion worth of shareholder value. Now, on top of that, they've got a $20 billion escrow account that the President Obama wrung out of them last week. That's $90 billion. Now, that's a huge incentive. Now, assuming that we remove this ridiculous $75 million cap, that sort of liability, just as you intimated earlier,
the Republicans and the conservatives are talking about
BP, and that's a big deal. That's a big deal.
No, I get that, but they're talking about replacing the $75 million cap with a $10 billion cap, and this looks like it might be $1 trillion liability.
And the Democrats are in charge. $1 trillion liability, please. That is way out of bounds. I mean, I think analysts are putting it somewhere, and this is a very conservative estimate, liberal estimate. I mean, it's upwards of $40 billion, which is still well short.
Oh, come on, that's nonsense. That's not even 2 years of the fishing industry just in the state of Louisiana.
But as opposed to your back of the napkin $1 trillion calculation from out of nowhere. I mean, $1 trillion calculation. Come on, that's not reasonable. I mean, certainly you're a reasonable man. I mean, I've read your bio. So
okay, so here, William Yateman, do you think that BP should get the corporate death penalty for animal cruelty?
The corporate death penalty? I don't even know what that
dissolve the corporation, pull their charter.
Oh, no. I mean, I think let's let the market dictate that. I mean, again, they're losing billions of dollars.
What about the animal cruelty?
Basis. The animal cruelty, well, I mean, I have not read the story you alluded to, and it appears that we're going off the statement of one captain of one ship. And again, if it's true, then that's outrageous, and they ought to be prosecuted with whatever animal cruelty laws there are in effect for. I mean, I guess these are federal waters, so I don't know what the jurisdiction there is. But Of course, that's a disgusting act. I mean, do it condone that? No way. But I mean, if it's true, let's investigate. Let's get to the bottom of it.
There's video of it.
Is there video?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I haven't seen it yet. So.
Yeah, it's out there. It's on YouTube. And this is what has provoked PETA to act. So you're of the opinion then that, for example, they were only using a single blowout preventer. There could have been as many as 4. There typically are in Norwegian waters, Brazilian waters. They could have simultaneously drilled a relief well like Canada requires. They did none of these things. You think that that's because Congress, the Republicans in Congress, pushed through this $75 million liability cap?
Republicans
do you similarly think that? Do you similarly agree with me that we should blow up Price? What is it, Price Anderson? That makes the taxpayers on the hook for nuclear power plants?
I'm not precisely sure where that came from. I don't know what that means.
Well, the only reason the nuclear power industry exists is because we limit their liability.
Get MMS out of this, get business out of bed with government, and then allow competitive discipline on the free market to dictate on the safety measures. I guarantee you another spill like this won't be happening for another generation due to the fact that BP almost is potentially bankrupt. That's a big signal for these companies to be safe.
William Yateman, thank you.